Well, Isaac, Cody, thank you guys so much for taking a few moments out of your day to meet with us on the Packaging School Show. Very delighted to talk to you guys. Specifically, we're going to be talking craft beer today. I like craft beer. I guess you guys probably like it. I don't think you'd be opposed to it. But so if you could, before we jump into all this, can you give us and our viewers a little background? Like, how long have you been around? I've heard if you can eat it or drink it, you guys have probably branded it.
For sure. Cody and we met in college in 2006. I'll kind of fast forward here. I'll save you all the propaganda. We decided to open Koto right after graduation. So we graduated 2009, started Koto in 2009, landed our first brewery client in 2010, and we've worked with over 50 now. It's like 52 if you want the real number, but we've worked with over 50 breweries over the last 9 years, I guess it would be, working in this space. And so we've worked really, I mean, that tracks the growth of the industry, because Cody, correct me if I'm wrong, I always flood these numbers a little bit. In the year 2000, there were 1,500 breweries. In the year 2010, there were 1,800. So that's not much growth. That's 300 breweries in a decade. From 2010 to 2020, taking out what's happening right now, of course, the pandemic, there are now 8,300 breweries in the country. So it's just like a straight hockey stick line straight up. And Koto was very fortunate to get into that space. It was a little by design. It was a little bit by luck. It was a little bit by passion, because we were always home brewing and drinking and fans of beer, still fans of beer to this day. And just kind of worked out to where we became really embedded in that space, working with breweries and planning initially. And then over the last couple of years, as the industry has matured, more brewery rebrands. Cody, I feel like I just rambled for a long time. Is that anything to add there?
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty accurate. We just got really lucky at a time when, particularly locally, but then nationally after that, people were sort of coalescing around locally produced food and beverage. And a lot of that focus came down on craft beer, and a lot of that ethos was wrapped up in being able to buy a better product for cheaper from a guy that you know, or from a woman that you know. So we were right there, and we got to kind of ride that up with everyone else.
So that kind of leads into my next question, actually. It sounds like maybe a little bit of luck, maybe a little bit of passion, but is that what got you guys focused on this craft beer industry?
I think so. Like, initially, because coming out of school, most of our contacts were actually in like the nonprofit sector. It was through actually some nonprofit work that we were exposed to food and like the beverage scene. Eventually we ran into a project that involved the Indiana Craft Brewers Guild. And I think from that point, there was no looking back. Like, Isaac and I both just love this so much, and we're just participating from the consumer standpoint anyway, that it just became a no-brainer when we saw how excited people were and felt how excited we were by the energy that was happening in the scene then.
Yeah. I know I'm a designer myself, and I know that it helps me when I'm informed, when I've got good information, when I've got good data from my clients to help me work, that usually ends up delivering a better product for them. And I know that recently you guys wrapped up a project with our sister company, Package Insight, where you guys used some pretty cool technology, used some eye tracking technology to do the study. I think it was a 2020 craft beer branding and packaging trends. That's what you're moving towards. What were some of your biggest takeaways from that, and did anything surprise you?
A lot of it surprised us, actually. I mean, I think about, I'll start, Cody, with the one that we and everyone in our industry, if you're a designer, Kevin, you probably have as well. You always talk about time to, I guess the technical metric would be time to find. Is that right, Cody? Like how fast your eye tracks something. We're always touting, look how this thing right here jumps off on shelf. And it turns out that doesn't actually mean that it's going to sell at all. In fact, it is like not an indicator in one bit. When you look at, what is it, total time looking at, like total gaze, and then I've already forgotten it. It's like 2 weeks ago. A lot of data. Yeah. That was really surprising. And then Cody, maybe you can speak to some of the trends, because we've always we've always done it. We've now gone on. This is our 5th year of writing these major kind of branding trends pieces, and a lot of the things that we would have thought would sell really well, because we're so immersed in this and we're navel gazing maybe to a bit, didn't really sell that well. So, Cody, what did you think?
I think the time to locate thing that Isaac just mentioned was probably the most surprising thing, but there were quite a few others that at least made me raise an eyebrow when we started to get the numbers back. To talk a little bit about the study, we were having people come into a craft beer bottle shop in Greenville, South Carolina, and the purpose of that was to track, like, what would people buy, how long would they look at the various items on the shelf, et cetera, et cetera. Isaac and I sort of talked about us coming up alongside the craft beer industry. And one of the things that we've seen develop probably over the last 5 years or so is the shift from kind of a standard 12-ounce can that's pre-printed with a logo real big, kind of the way like Coors or Miller Lite does it, to these 16-ounce cans that have a pressure-sensitive label applied that are basically just canvases for any and all type of artwork. Mm-hmm. Those beers initially, at least, were almost exclusively like hazy IPAs, double India pale ales, big beers, rare kind of specialty beers where you might run them off every couple weeks. That's since exploded into sours and fruited beers and all kinds of other experimental wild things. Because of who I associate with those beers, and this probably says more about me and my preconceived notions, but I have a very set idea in my head of like who a craft beer nerd is supposed to be. Mm-hmm. It's like a dude with tortoiseshell glasses and a beard and a cool vest or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Man bun too.
Yeah, exactly. Rocking the high end, the high knot. But what we were seeing from this study is that format, that 16-ounce, like heavily illustrated piece of artwork on a big IPA or a sour or XYZ, go down the line, sold really well to everyone. Gender did not matter. Age did not matter. Education, profession, whether you're married, did not matter. Everyone was buying those things, and those were by and far the most successful, meaning the most people purchased the same SKUs over and over of the study. Surprised me a little bit, checked my preconceived notions quite a bit. So humbling in that regard, but yeah, that was something that really stood out to me.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's not that craft beer nerd? Because I actually dropped by there. That was a Greenville Beer Exchange. Mm-hmm. I walked around a bit. I took some photos, and there was a mom in there with her kid. I mean, the whole demographic has changed. I feel like there was a mom in there with her kid. She was shopping. There was an older woman. There was a couple of college guys. I mean, it was everybody. And like you said, they were eyeballing those heavily illustrated big cans. But so why do you think that is? How is it such mass appeal?
I would be really curious to hear what Isaac thinks about this too, but I'll go ahead and answer first. I think that at some point between when breweries started doing this, a lot of times they're doing it just out of like cost necessity, because it's too expensive to have 12 pallets of pre-printed cans that you don't know if you're going to be able to sell them all, because the market's so wishy-washy and people always want to try something new, and you don't want to be sitting on that inventory that might just be dead money taking up space in your warehousing. So people started doing this, and I think at some point there was a transition from people were doing it out of necessity to all the cool breweries were doing it, all the cool, desirable experimental beer styles were showing up in that format. All of a sudden, now the consumers learned that's what to look for if I want that type of beer. Mm-hmm. So in a lot of ways, and Isaac's used the word canon, I think that sums it up really well, that has become the canon look for cool, one-off, hard to find, potentially expressive, creative, experimental craft beer. And I think people know that now, and they look for it, and it doesn't matter who you are. You've just gleaned that by, paying attention to the culture. I don't know. Isaac, what do you think about that?
I would just add that I think it has become representative of craft itself. It really speaks to this, whether or not the beer is a special one-off whale kind of thing. people tend to look for that because that is what craft beer looks like in 2020. Even though there's a million other examples that don't look like that, that is a very quick index for what it looks like. The example we gave, and this is funny, this actually rustled a lot of feathers. Like the only kind of negative stuff people were talking about, they're like, oh, you're saying pressure sensitive is a design trend? It's like, well, I understand what you're saying. It's done out of necessity. It's done because you don't have a repeat brewing schedule, obviously. But we found there's this funny example that we found a couple of years ago of Sam Adams, New England hazy IPA, whatever they call it, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Boston Beers. It's one of the biggest brewing, I mean, literally like the first or second largest brewery in the world, beyond, the big 3 or 4. And they had printed their can to look like it was a bright can with a label on it. Like they printed probably 10 million of the cans to look like this thing that other breweries are doing because out of necessity. And it's just like a restaurant group, like the Chipotle aesthetic looks like it does because they started out really raw and showing materiality. And that became a beautiful aesthetic and a way to talk about how we're just showcasing ingredients and quality more than like, pomp and circumstance. And it's like spending a lot of money, a restaurant group, to get that same effect. Like I'm rambling now, but it is just interesting that it has now become, I'll use the word again, a canon for craft beer. That is what craft beer looks like today.
Yeah. And I think, too, there are a lot of new kind of artists, a lot of different styles that can be represented. And, I think that also speaks to that craft feel. It feels handcrafted when, especially some that are like heavily illustrated. I mean, there are so many wild styles you see now. You walk down the aisle and they jump off. And I know for me, I'm a craft beer guy. I've got a cool vest, no man bun. I've got the beard, but I've completely judged a book by its cover, where it's like, hey, I really like that art. Yeah. I like IPA. Let me try it, and I'll buy a 4-pack. And that just takes me into all these different breweries I've never tried before. And it's, do you think that it creates loyalty in consumers, or do you feel like they're just, I wouldn't even use the word fickle, but they just want to try a bunch of different things?
That's when you get into, if the beer's good, they'll come back, I think.
I guess that has to be good still.
Yeah.
I mean, you would hope so. I mean,
Right.
and good is always subjective, because I have friends that like beer that I know objectively is not good, and what does it even matter? I mean, who cares if you like it? But yeah, I think that branding and package design, their main drive is to get you to fall in love with the product and a company and come back to it again and again. And assuming that the quality is there, let's just say that is, yeah, it's going to make people very loyal to you. And on the design side itself, I mean, Cody, I think you had written in the branding trends piece on the pressure sensitive and the maximalism design. It's not just a thing you can talk about and brag about now it's something that you can post on Instagram. So you're signaling to the world that, I have great taste. I'm a man of wealth and taste. Like, this is the thing that I like, this fancy IPA that looks like beet juice or whatever.
Yeah.
So it shows people how cool you are.
Yeah. And we do that. I mean, that's certainly our culture. We take pictures of our food. We take pictures of, and it is kind of an experience. These tall cans, they're beautiful. They're printed, they're bright. And it's just like, and I use Untapped. And that's a great app, helps me keep track of my things, but I've always got a shot of the can in there, because it's just, it's almost like trading cards to some degree.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
I think of like screen printed, like collecting like gig posters or trading cards or any kind of like record art.
Yeah.
Like it, for me psychologically, and I think for a lot of people who are plugged into this, it does play that role of, I'm going to go out and find all the cool things that I can find, not just because I like craft beer, but also because I'm a fan of illustration, or I'm a fan of design, or I'm just a fan of things that look cool.
Yeah.
Cool production techniques, whatever. I think that has kind of woven itself into the culture as well.
Yeah. Cause there is a lot that's wound into that. You touched on it, like good taste, art, design. It's a reflection of me. I'm into these things. I might do these things. Like I said, I'm a designer, so I draw, and I'm drawn to a particular kind of style. And it's like, yeah, this is kind of me. I like this beer, but check this out. This kind of represents who I am a little bit too. you guys have some books out there, but you recently released another book called Craft Beer Rebranded, and it's a step-by-step guide to rebranding your brewery. How would one of these breweries know if it's time for a rebrand?
We list a lot of different pain points in the book. I think an important thing to know is that it's not always people tend to think that rebranding is negative. Think about the the dozen or so that we've done, Cody. Only one was really in a position where it's like our sales are sliding, we're in trouble, we got to fix it. It's almost always on the other side of we've outgrown this home brewed look that we have. Our production schedule is just, we're always reinventing the wheel because we're putting so much stuff out there. We're ordering stuff in so much quantity now, like Cody mentioned, like pallets and truckloads of stuff, that we want to make sure that our design is actually consistent. And so it's generally a good sign that you're growing. And we come in and we really help people kind of, in a small way, evolve to be more set up for that next leg of growth. So that's why a lot of folks come to us to rebrand. Some of the reasons it happen, really, if there are any gnawing reasons or things that you deal with on a daily basis, a common one that I already mentioned is you feel like you're always reinventing the wheel. For folks that are putting out packaging as like kind of not necessarily seasonal, but you're just doing, a new canned release a couple times a month forever. That's a grind. And if you are doing any sort of customized labeling, your in-house person, hopefully you have an in-house person, they're getting beat down. And if there's not a system for that, then your stuff's not going to be consistent. Yeah. It's just, that's a really small example, but it's really grating. We've heard that from a dozen folks that you get beat down under your own production schedule.
Yeah.
What do you think, Cody?
I think so Isaac mentioned the last 10 years and what that's meant in terms of even just the sheer growth of the amount of breweries that are in the industry. We have seen people who perhaps have been around for even longer than that, but have felt the increasing pressure of cool brewery XYZ just opened down on the corner, and now people are going there because they have that like shiny new appeal that new restaurants and new breweries get. Mm-hmm. And then now a dozen more of those are opening, and here we are, haven't changed a thing on the shelf, and we're all of a sudden where we were 10 years ago, which is, craft beer still a thing where there's a lot of room, a lot of space to spread your elbows. All of a sudden it feels very crowded. And people are doing innovative things that are pushing customer expectations forward, not just for the quality of the beer in the can or the experimentality of the beer in the can, but also for the look of it. And, it's also just a question of how much noise there is on the shelf. So if you have 20 new guys cranking out stuff all the time, how do you keep people excited? How do you keep people engaged? And a lot of times it is a simple matter of, let's look at the shelf set. Let's think about our brand. How can we adapt this to do better in the market as it stands today?
I want to give one more. Cody and I just spoke primarily to kind of public-facing design things. I think another common one we run into are those people that have been around 10 years, 20 years. You'll wake up one day and you've been successful in spite of yourself in a lot of ways. People will wake up and realize as these newer companies are opening up, they've seen everyone blaze the path before them. So they know they need to understand their story, their positioning, their why, their brand values, all these things that consumers care about. And we're not even talking about Gen Z, which is going to come of legal drinking age here in 5 or 7 years. So they want to like make an impact with their purchases, just like everyone. Mm-hmm. People don't really know what they stand for, or like, it's like, we started Cody, you and I, this is not a public facing message, but any entrepreneur that starts a company does it in a lot of ways because they think they can do it better than the next guy and they want the freedom that comes from opening their own shop. That doesn't mean that someone's going to buy my beer because I want to be my own boss or I'm unemployable. But that's a lot of the brewery owners we work with don't know what their story is, even though there's obviously a story there. Because if you make 40,000 barrels a year and people are buying it, loving it, you're doing something right. But a lot of people don't. They need help squaring away that story and really coming in like an agnostic set of outside eyes, framing it with them. So that might be the most important reason out of everything. It's just people needing help evolving their messaging, completely nuking it and starting over. And then it can also be as simple as just some spring cleaning. We're coming in, we're updating some stuff to make it easier for you. I mean, it can run that entire gamut.
I know in my history of, because I was a small business design guy, and I used to tell clients that you can relax in your brand because a lot of the decision-making process is taken care of. You can just focus on your product, whatever that is. And then when it comes time to, well, what colors does this need to be? It's already decided. Or what style should this be? It's already decided. And you can just focus on making consistent, good product and, just trust and relax in the brand that you've worked hard on. Now, a follow-up to that, we've talked rebranding, but what about the guy or the girl that they've been brewing in their home and there is no brand? Can they learn some things from this book? Are there some takeaways for them?
If they're planning to start a business, you mean?
Yeah, if they're planning to just start up and they just need it, there is no brand. They just need branded. Will this book help them?
Yeah, our 2017 book, Craft Beer Branding Guide, was more geared towards breweries and planning. However, I do think that section 5 rather of the Rebranded book is basically everything we wrote back in 2017, but with 3 more years of experience in branding brewery. It's just way more to the point, and you also have the workbook component that you can go through. And if you read a chapter on brand values, you can actually use two or three exercises to frame your brand values, understand your positioning, understand your audience, that sort of thing. So there is a lot to be gained from that. You can also, should mention, you can read this stuff for free online. You don't have to buy the book. We've put it out there so people can read it for those people out there that maybe don't know if they want to start a brewery or not. They can check that out and give it a go.
Well, that was my question, because it's such a robust publication. People can buy the book, but it is available online to read for free. And we'll put all these links and stuff in the description here. But why give this away for free?
We don't make this public because it just sounds like BS. I'm in mixed company. Cody's here. We like to give back and support the industry that we love. You could be cynical and say, oh, they do it because it's a business development thing or it's an X and Y and Z, but we do it because we're writing this stuff and putting it out there on various industry blogs anyway. We're recording video, we're doing podcasts. We're like, I don't think that anything is going to hurt us by putting this out there for free. And if people want to buy a beautiful artifact and own the book, I'm that person. If I can read it for free, I want to buy it too. If you listen to your favorite band's music, you're going to buy their stuff to support them. Mm-hmm. So, basically, Koto is a band, is what I'm saying, and we want to just put it out there for people to read and hopefully get value from if they want to.
Yeah. I think of myself as the bass player of Koto.
You definitely would be the bass player, yeah, for sure.
Oh man, well, I think that's a testament to your passion for not only your profession but even for craft beer. You just want people to do it right, and you want them to do well, because I'm sure you'd like to try another good craft beer, done well, branded well. And speaking of branding, is there a favorite success story over the span of your years that you were like, man, that was a really good rebrand, or that just, I don't know, I just go back and get encouragement from that?
That we've done?
Yes. Yeah. Ideally.
I don't know. I mean, this sounds like a fake answer, but they're all special to some degree. Our work with Atlanta.
Asking a parent, which is your favorite kid. I get that.
Yeah, I mean, our work with Atlanta holds a special spot for me because there was so much writing for them to rebrand. They were, for folks who don't know, Atlanta Brewing is now 26 or 27, but they were founded in 1993 as Atlanta Brewing. In 2010, facing this onslaught of craft beer, kind of a big mid-tier brewery, kind of stumbling, not knowing what to do, they rebranded to Red Brick Brewing, which was the name of their number one selling beer at the time. It'd be like New Belgium rebranding to Fat Tire Brewing or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then for 7 years, they were on this slide of beer quality was bad, distributor relationship was bad. There's all this other amazing beer. Atlanta is actually a surprisingly awesome beer market. There are half a dozen breweries down there, 2 now include Atlanta, that are good. So they were just getting their lunch stolen. And we came in, and they had decided to rebrand to Atlanta. So it's not like some big thing that Koto brought to the table, but they wanted to do that. And it was kind of do or die, because if it wasn't handled correctly, they likely would have gone out of business if they had continued on the path they were. And their team was lovely, and the work that we did was really fun and great. And it's been just sales wise, it's been huge. We get to kind of selfishly take credit for all their hard work, just because of this one thing that we did with them. So yeah, that's been a good one. Cody, do you have anything else that you think?
I see the Pro Sixers right behind your head there. When I think about, remember how those looked when we came into the project? So
Woof.
Yeah. And they knew they had kind of changed ownership in the company. They had this amazing beer, and then their packages looked like, I don't know, I don't want to be mean, but they weren't pretty.
Yeah.
And to take them from that to where they are now, and I think they just launched cans too. I mean, it's like righting this incredible wrong. Mm-hmm. because Isaac will probably agree, some of the best beer we've tried ever. That they were making, but the packaging was like reflective of the opposite. It was like impoverished. It was really bad. And so to take that and make that match the level of what they're selling, I hope they just catch fire as a result of it, because I'm just really proud about where they started and where we finished.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's really exciting. That really resonates with me. I know when I've worked with people, it's like I work with a local diner, and it's like they have the best burgers in town, but nobody would know, because when you walk in, you smell toilet cakes, and there's this weird signage, and it hurt me on a spiritual level. Like, you guys have this great thing, but nobody knows about it. Nobody wants to know, because these other things are hindering you. So it's just really exciting to hear the passion that's coming out and what you're talking about, where you understand the quality of the product these people have, and you just feel like you just take this personal responsibility to help them and pour yourselves into making them look their best. So thank you guys for doing that.
Of course.
Yeah, they paid us, but tremendously proud of it still.
Yeah,
I mean,
but that's even better, to get paid for what you love to do,
yes.
And you can help people out. As we wrap up here, do you have any advice? Is there anything that you can share from over a decade of experience with like a startup craft brewery, something that you might just impart to them before they take the plunge?
This isn't very sexy, but I think the idea of positioning is extremely important and overlooked by almost any business in any industry on the planet. A lot of people try to be generalists, and you see that in beer too. There's nothing wrong with making a good porter, a good pale, a good X, Y, and Z. But if you can have a very clear understanding of what you do well, and hopefully that intersects with what you get paid to do really well and what you're passionate about, if those three things kind of align, that's like the secret of business. Yeah. Then you can do something really special, and your fans will love it. I think that positioning is the big one that we always push people to do. If you're a 40-year-old brewery, if you're a 3-year-old brewery, if you're a startup brewery. The other one would be, Cody, brand values, probably. I think that's kind of a thing that people now today know. That's like a very commonplace thing, but still people are always talking about, we need to make quality beer and have great service and be enmeshed in our local community. And it's like, that's fine. Those are table stakes. You need to understand really why you run your business the way you do. Why do you brew the beer that you brew? Why do you exist? What role do you play in your community and your people's lives? If you can understand those kind of back of house, upstream things, and assuming the beer's good and the service is good and you're always striving to improve, everything else will take care of itself. But don't gloss over, we would call it, the three of us would call it strategy, but really it's not so much just a thing that lives on a brief and goes in a drawer. I mean, these are why you exist in a lot of ways. So I would push people to think of those before designing a logo or packaging or anything like that.
Yeah. Any thoughts, Cody?
I would just echo and kind of put an underline under what Isaac just said there, that when you're thinking about what you want to stand for as a company, when you're thinking about what you want to make, what you want to be known for, try to push past the things that obviously everyone's going to say, because everyone is saying it, and you're not actually going to be known for those things because that's what everybody else is trying to own too. So what are the things that are immutably yours, not necessarily better, we say all the time, just different than what other people are doing, and really try to own that and make sure that that gets through to your logo design, your packaging, how you talk to customers when they come in the door, everything. Because if without that, you don't have much, especially with so many people in the game now.
Yeah, it's like if you take care of the primary, the secondary is going to take care of itself. I think that's just valuable information. And I know in this interview we could have gotten into trends and for 2020, but we're going to point people to those things. You guys have a lot of that information on your site, so there'll be lots of links in the description of this video. So just in closing, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for making people look their best. And thanks for working on craft beer, because I like it.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it.
The whole experience, a lot of fun. All right. Well, you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
See you, Kevin.
See you.